didn't want us to do it because he needed our help, and I guess they still had a little syrup left from the year before and all that, but we wore him down after a while. So that's how my brother Jack and I got into the sugar business. We went out and got 85 taps and buckets and things, and out around where the old arch was, and we went out there and tapped them, and Dad let Jack take the third horse that we had. We had 3 horses. They had to have 2 for the team that took care of the barn chores and stuff like that. And so I took the third horse, and they had a little bobsled with 6 milk cans on it, and Jack gave it a sap, brought it in. And that's where I learned to start boiling sap syrup, whatever you want to call it. I was 12 years old, and same age you are. And so we made syrup that year, and I think we made about 15 gallons a couple of times the school opened again. So I think we had 1 load of sap after that. We gave it to a neighbor and so on, but we sort of got bitten by the bug. So that following summer, we were short of help, working on the farm, getting the hay in and all that stuff, and a lot of that my grandfather couldn't do. Even as kids as we were, we used to have to run the dump rake. That was 1 horse on a dump rake, and people would dump it in windrows, and then somebody had to bunch it up and put it on a wagon, put it in the barn and so forth. But anyway, they had a program during the war, what they call Land Corps boys out of New York City. These were young folks that between the ages of 16 and 18. See, the draft couldn't draft anybody until you were 18. If your parents gave you consent, you could actually join the service if you wanted to at age 17. But there was all these kids down there, so a whole mess of them came up to Vermont to help the farmers. That was the whole idea. Of course, they'd never seen a cow before or anything like that or anything. And the 3 of them were up in Rutland, and Dad got one of them. Turned out after we find out he was a big guy, but he lied about his age. He was actually only 50. And so on. So he helped during the summer, and we got the hay done about the middle of August. Over in the pasture, which was native pasture, was all open then, hardly any trees in it, but there were some pines in another man's property nearby, and the seeds had been blowing in, and these pine trees have been gradually here and there growing up. You know how a pine tree bushes right out when it's out in the open by itself. And we told Dad, gee, they're starting to ruin your pasture. If it was a maple tree, the cows would have eaten it down and never would have got anywhere, but these pine trees are taking over. We said to Dad, gee, we ought to let us go over there and trim up those pine trees over there and get those big long limbs off from them and make your pasture better. He thought that was a great idea, because we didn't tell him what we were really going to do. We got a cross-cut saw. The 3 of us went over there, and we were cutting the trees down, cutting about 1 log out of each tree, about 2 feet through. So about 2 weeks later, we took him over there, and he couldn't believe his eyes. There was all these trees cut down, and these big logs there. Back in those days, they didn't have many log trucks to move logs to a sawmill. They had what they call portable sawmill. They go to a place where there's a whole bunch of trees cut off, set up a portable sawmill, and there was one up the road about a mile that year. And so Dad said, well, you guys work that, all right. He took the hay wagon over, and somehow or other, they got the logs loaded on the hay wagon, took them up to the sawmill, and we wound up with 2,000 board feet of pine lumber. And so we spent all that fall on Saturdays and everything building the beginning of what was going to be our first sugar house over the woods. And I remember that Christmas, Dad took a galvanized piece of probably 8-inch diameter furnace pipe, unhitched the thing and rolled the thing out flat. He painted on it Clark Brothers Sugar Company, gave it to us for a sign for Christmas. That was a big deal. So that was the beginning of Clark Brothers Sugar Company. By then we were 13 and 11, and so on. So the next year we thought we were going to have an evaporator in there, but we didn't even happen. We just bored a big front pan with divisions in it off of another neighbor, set it up on some stones over there, and we cooked that year. It wasn't a very good year that year anyway. And then finally in 1946 we did get a real evaporator, put it over the sugar house, and we built onto it. We built a woodshed on it, and 2-3 more we've added onto it for about 5 years. And places that cover storage tanks and all that sort of stuff and so on. So that's how we got started.
If you had to give any advice to people our age, what could it be?
What would it be?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, it would be have faith in yourself. Don't listen to what somebody else tells you. I mean, you got to realize there's way over 1 billion people on Earth. There's no other person that's exactly like you anywhere. And, you're going to have a few rainy days in your life, but don't feel too bad about that, because you didn't have any rainy days in your life. You wouldn't have any crops to eat, and any vegetables to eat. If you don't believe that, go out and take one look at California where we were 2 years ago, and you gotta feel sorry for them people out there, because I'm telling you, they are desperate, they really are. And water's the bread of life in a way, but you'll have some days when things aren't going the way you want them to and all that, and, you know, and don't let somebody else tell you ought to do this, you ought to do that. If you got your heart set on doing a certain thing, some of you, when you get out of school, out of high school, you'll be going on to college, some of you won't. Some of you may want to follow a specific career, and if it's something you think you want to do and you would like to do, I know a lot of times parents say, oh, you ought to do what I'm doing, or you ought to go here, you ought to go that, and you can read stories all the time about people that didn't agree with their parents, and they started out in what seemed to be a failure and wound up being pretty important people in the world and so forth. So if you got a dream, follow it, basically. And, you know, don't let somebody steer you off the course or make fun of you or anything like that, because you're your own self, and what other people do and say shouldn't hurt you, and you shouldn't let it bother you, okay?
Yeah. What do you think of the technology today, that we use today?
Well, I've got split emotions on that. It's like anything, anytime you get something new, and most everything new we've had since the 1920s, let's face it. The automobile came into existence around 1900, for anybody to know it. Was it good or bad? I guess you'd probably have to say it was good, but it had some bad aspects to it. Then radio came along, that was mostly good, but it had some bad aspects to it. And then in around 1930, somebody invented television. It was more than 20 years more before you actually began seeing it being used, and it did some great things, it did some bad things. And now you're in the middle of the internet and all this modern technology, and you already know, good as it is, there's bad things with it. You've got hackers getting information. I think we have a lot of concerns. Technology is great, but it needs to be managed in a safe way. And that is one of the big challenges coming down the road, because I'd hate to see the day come when hackers can come in and completely shut down our military, completely shut down our electrical grid all over the country, and tie everything up so you can't go anywhere. And whatever, it's a little amazing sometimes when you have a bad storm or something, you know, and something gets knocked out. Sometimes how helpless and crippled people are all over the country. Nothing works. Electricity don't work. I can't get anywhere. And my food's going to spoil in the refrigerator and all this kind of stuff, you know, and it can be a big thing. Usually it's just something small, but it can be a big thing. And technology's good, but I think you have to take it in perspective, and you know, a lot of people say now they want to be on Facebook. I think there's a lot of good things on Facebook, but I also think there's a lot of people putting a lot of stuff on Facebook. Everybody would be better off if it never was put on there, to be honest with you, because it's creating problems for them and creating problems for other people too. So I mean, you've got to make judgments on what looks like it would be positive and what might be negative, and everything you get, there's two sides to everything as far as that's concerned, and so forth. And you know, you got cars today that go 120 miles an hour, and 60 years ago they only go about 50 miles an hour. Are you safer in one today that goes 120 miles an hour and you would have been in one back then? Well, might not be much different. Back then there weren't any seat belts, probably weren't any doors on some of them, you know, and there weren't any windshields and all this kind of stuff. So you got to take it in perspective, but you need to respect things, because anything good can be turned into something that's not good. That's the point. You need to kind of be on your toes all the while to just see where you're going. Technology is great, but it needs to be used. Look what it's done in medicine, for instance, things like that, and so forth. But I mean, it's critical that you know, that it's used for good things, and it doesn't get in the hands of wrong people and, you know, string things in the wrong direction.
All right. If there's anything that you had to change in your lifetime, do you know what it would be?
Are we going to change something? I don't know. You can always look back on your life, say, if I had to live over again, I'd do this or I'd do that, and whatever else. And I guess I'm still trying to make up my mind what I'm going to do. That's my problem. I never really made up my mind. I started out as a dairy farmer, became a sugar maker. We went out as a dairy farmer in the 60s. We had beef cattle for a while. I started doing carpenter work. I built 2 houses in Rutland. I built 4 in Pawlet. And then I built one for my brother over in Pawlet. He wanted a big fancy stone fireplace chimney. I was never a mason, but I couldn't find a mason that had brains enough to build one, so all I could build was bricks and cement blocks. So I went into building chimneys and so forth. So we built over the next 10 years probably 10 or 12 35-ton stone chimneys here and there, right down the road here, half a mile. There's a big one you can look at down there. The guy that originally built that, the thing, he did such a poor job, it fell over on August 2nd at 2 o'clock in the afternoon in 1973. Sounded like an earthquake. There was 35 ton of rocks and everything. There wasn't 2 stones hooked together afterwards. And the lady that owned the place, she said, "What happened to my chimney?" And I said, "Oh, she got me down there before it fell over because it was starting to lean away from the house." And she said, "What's the matter with my chimney?" And I said, "I got a round pointed shovel. I dug under the edge of the chimney." I said, "There's no foundation under it." It was sitting on the foundation of the house on the inside toward the wall, and the outside was just sand. She said, "That's going to fall over." She said, "You want to take it?" And I said, "No." I said, "You're probably going to have a lawsuit." And I said, "Just make sure your neighbors know that it's going to fall over. There were no kids around there." Nothing. I said, "Let it fall down." They did. So then we spent 3 months rebuilding the thing. She said, "Well, I guarantee you it won't fall down the next time. The house may fall down, but the chimney won't." If you don't believe it, you can go down and look at it right now. It looks just as good as the day we finished it 45 years ago, or whatever it was, 40-something years ago. So we did that for a while, and then finally, for whatever reason, we got into the farmers market business in 1977. And so that's kind of been our main industry after that for a lot of years. And all this time, of course, maple was a big thing with me. I was, president of the County Association for 8 years, and I was president of the Vermont State Association for 32 years, and after that I was president of the Vermont Farmers Market for 11 years, and so on and so forth. So we had a lot to do with things like this coming to be and the things that they did over the years. And of course, you know that there were tremendous changes, whether it was maple, whether it was all kinds of agriculture right after World War II in the early 1950s. Then you began to see major changes. The Industrial Revolution of agriculture started about that time. We began to see pickup hay balers out in the field, choppers that were chopping corn, tractors, and all this stuff. Maple actually kind of dragged behind that. They were still using sap buckets and whatever, and a lot of people, the maple business was they weren't doing a good job marketing anything. Actually, the maple industry was shrinking up because everybody was so busy with the dairy business. Dairy was a big thing in Vermont all through, still is, but I mean all through the 20th century. It was a big deal here. And back when I was growing up, Vermont used to brag they had more cows than people. We had 330,000 people in the state. The population, the cow population was 350,000. And we were the 11th biggest dairy state in the entire United States, which is saying quite a lot, even way back then, and whatever. So that was kind of where it all went, and things were changing obviously all through that time. The Extension Service came into existence, and of course they had programs to help farmers raise stuff. And my brothers and I, during the 1950s, we went out doing custom hay harvesting. We had a New Holland baler that makes these big square, they weren't the big ones like they do nowadays, but big square 70-pound square bales, and we used to do about 20,000 of them a year. And then in the fall, we chopped corn all around Pawlet. Back then, silos were either 12 or 14 feet in diameter and 13 feet high. We used to do 25 or 30 silos. We filled a silo a day putting there. We did that for about 10 years, custom harvested for other people and so forth, whatever. So that's kind of how that all got grown up and the way things went. And the maple industry began to turn around in the 1960s. Tubing was invented, and it took a few years to get that working right and so forth. But it really didn't start turning around till the 1970s, interestingly enough. And every time the maple industry had a crisis, it came out of it better off for it afterwards, and that's interesting. I mean, even the energy crunch could have put the maple industry out of business, but the reverse osmosis machine had been invented by then, and they started using them. They're still a key thing they're using today, and that's the energy saver. So that's kind of how that went.
Cool. Don't ask me a question, Amy.
What kind of machines did you use, like when you used to farm?
Say this again.
what kind of like machines and equipment did you mainly use for farming?
Machines and things, yeah, okay, well, we covered that a little bit. I mean, up until and through World War II, you know, everything we did on our farm. There were other farms that Rob Lee Mason, for instance, had tractors, and Dad used to hire them come over. They used to custom plowing and harrowing back then. They did do that. They did have, there was tractors around. Dad had an old one back in the 30s, but it didn't last very long. But it was primarily horsepower. And with horsepower, he had a sulky plow, which means the plow had wheels on it, but it only plowed one furrow at a time. Same thing with a cultivator. You had a sulky cultivator, you could cultivate one row of corn with a team of horses and so forth that way, or you could have a single cultivator, you walk behind, hang on to the handles, and cultivate corn that way. And so it was really tremendous, I'd call hand labor, till we got past World War II and into about 1950, and from then on, Dad got his first tractor, I think, in 1949, and we got another one, and a couple more, I guess, around 1952, and then we bought a hay baler, and we bought a forage harvester and so forth. Even back then, of course, the forage harvester only cut one row of corn. Today they got something that are cutting 8 rows right around here, but and all that. But so that's a big difference from that. But so machinery began to come in the dairy industry. In maple, we didn't see any. It was pretty much hand work too. You oftentimes used to tap the trees by hand and put in metal spouts, and of course, in the good old days, some places, there was a lot of the sap was just literally gathered on foot without even a tank and a horse, if you will. They had a yoke went over your shoulder, and a couple pails hung out here, and you lugged it to the sugar house, the snow wasn't too deep and all that stuff. As I said, in the 1960s, they began experimenting with maple tubing, but it was another 15 years before they really got that to work good, because the first few years they had airlock trouble, and they didn't know enough about sap, for one thing. They had all these kind of problems, so they were dealing with them, and so they were still using a lot of buckets, and some people still use a few today, a little bit maybe. The evaporators were pretty much the same from when we first started the design of them. The evaporators really didn't change a whole lot all the way up through till about the middle 1970s, and the style of them didn't change so much after that, but back then everybody for the most part was burning wood, and then in the 60s we started burning oil. You can imagine buying fuel oil 11 cents a gallon. You don't do that today. And that was so cheap, you didn't have to hire somebody to fire your evaporator, so it didn't matter. I mean, the evaporators weren't that efficiency, you know. They had bricks up the side of them inside, and you stand in front of them, you'd put their skull to death. I mean, the steam was going through the roof, that was all being wasted heat. Well, it wasn't wasted heat, you were boiling off the sap and all that, but I mean, there was no technology trying to use or reuse the steam energy, any of that stuff. And then after the energy crunch came along, the reverse osmosis machine came along, which is a membrane piece of equipment that you pump. It was first used for desalting seawater, actually, because salt and sugar molecules are bigger than water molecules, and the water goes through it, and the rest stays behind, so on. So, and all you needed was a pump to run that thing, and a lot less energy than a raging fire, if you will, and so forth. So anyway, things began to get more efficient after that, and so that's where technology changed things a good deal over those later years. But it was really hand work, especially in the 30s and the 40s, and of course the 30s there was a big depression, and the country was in real financial straits, and it didn't really go anywhere for a long time there. Everybody was just trying to make a living. Of course, you lived on a farm, you were better off than if you lived in town somewhere, because you at least could raise your own food, cut your own wood, and all this kind of stuff. We used to have to cut. We had, when our grandparents and parents lived there in the 30s and 40s, they had 2 chunk stoves and 2 big kitchen stoves. It took 24-foot cords of wood every winter just to do that. My brother and I, when we were 8, 10 years old, we went out in the woods and our folks cut most of the wood, and of course there were no chainsaws back then or anything like that. Oh, we probably chopped a cord or 2 small trees about like this with our axes when we were 8, 9 years old and stuff like that.
And what's your favorite story to tell, or your favorite memory?
Favorite story? Gee, there's so many of them. I don't know which one would be a favorite one, to be honest with you. Of course, we've had a few humorous ones along the way every once in a while and so forth, but you know, so many different things we've done over the years. I don't know if I could even pick a favorite over something else as far as that's concerned. I know, well, you know, a couple of things we did when I went to high school, and you guys are gonna be starting that pretty quick, or at least over to Granville somewhere, or Pullman, or wherever you're going. We wanted, something besides the bit stock to tap trees with and so on, so, Billy Jordan, he still lives right down the road here, about a mile and a half, and, he and I were in school the same year, and we were taking what they called industrial arts back then, and third year we were over there, we were doing, that particular year, they were dealing with mechanical things, and they actually cast aluminum over there, and we cast aluminum pulleys and turned them on the lathe and made stuff like this. Well, the other thing I should tell you that made a big difference in our lives, 1936 was the first time we even had electricity. Think of that one. The towns had it before that, but not out in the rural country, and there was a federal law went through, they were going to do rural electrification, so the farmers, most of them, not all of them, but most of them signed up for electricity, and so late in 1936, we got electricity for the first time. That was great. Up the land, you were using ice boxes and putting up ice off the pond and all this kind of stuff in the winter, so forth. So, and then we had a cooler in the barn that we could cool the milk with electrically then instead of what we had before, so forth that way. So that made a big change in our life, obviously, at that point in time. But then after we got going there, I started telling you in, I think it was 1947, I was a junior probably at that time in high school, and Bill was too, and we were working in the shop down there. And so his mother, back those days when people didn't have electricity, they had actually washing machines. They must have kept them out in the back room somewhere that ran on a gasoline engine, little gasoline engine. Well, his mother got done using that when she got electricity, but it was still sitting around out in the back room down there. So Bill said he was a good mechanic. I never was much of a mechanic. Bill said, "Geez, let's build a tapper." So he got his mother's gasoline engine off the back of his off her washing machine, brought it up to the shop over there. We cast aluminum pulley, put on it, so we put a string around it so we could pull it to start the engine with. Made up a chuck and some bits and everything and so forth. And of course, we wanted to go to ruggeds, so here we are using 1/4-inch angle iron, and I gosh, and the thing got it all done, only weighed 35 pounds, and that was just great climbing up a mountain with 3 feet of snow on the ground. I mean, after all day long with that, you want to sit down and catch your breath for a few minutes maybe. Tappers they got nowadays weigh about 3 or 4 pounds, and that was quite a load. I still got the thing, and it was one of the first power tappers ever made in the state of Vermont. King Company up in St. Albans made one the same year that went on your back, but I didn't like a gasoline engine tapped on my back. This thing, we did have shoulder straps. We held it out just like this. If anything went wrong, all you had to do was throw it. So forth, but we could really tap trees with it, so that was a big incentive. Then we had awful poor telephone service back there then. A lot of it was one wire line, and the other would be a second line that should have been a ground line. It was just, they just grounded the thing to trees and everything else, you know. And the company, the people who owned it, and there was family, part of them were in Pawlet and part of them up in Shoreham. Their name was Foot, and we always laughed about it because we said most of the time their lines were only about a foot above the ground. Some days they worked, some days they didn't. The wires were getting old. They were metal wires. They weren't copper. I mean, they weren't. They were iron of some sort. Well, anyway, a guy bought the whole system out in 1947, put up all new lines. And, they were tearing down the old ones. So I saw him when I was in school, of course. This was in October, and I said to, this was in 47 too, and I said to him, I said, "Gee," I said, "what are you going to do with all that?" "Oh," he says, "Going to tear them down, throw it away, junk stuff, you know." I said, "Gee, I'd like some of that wire. I want to build a telephone line 1/2 mile from our house over to the sugar house so we can talk back and forth and whatever." And, well, he said, "I'll tell you what I'll do." He says, "We're leaving here about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon." We got back to school about that time. He said, "I'm going to leave my wire winder here." I think they had the stuff down on the ground. I don't remember climbing the pole to tell you that. He says, "I'll leave my wire winder here." And he said, "You can wind up and take all the insulators you can possibly find till we get back tomorrow morning." So I remember, by gosh, I went out and I worked the dark, and I think we must have wound up 2 miles of line anyway. And I got the next morning about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, and wound up more stuff. Well, I had to go to school. Brought it all back, and I guess they brought the poles back, all these cedar poles. They weren't all that heavy and so forth. So anyway, the next year I built a 2-wire line all the way 1/2 mile from the house all the way over to the sugar house, and through the woods. Set the poles around, put them up. You got a ladder, climbed up the pole, hooked the wires on, pulled them up, And then we had a lady who lived a couple miles away, and back then they didn't call it, the name of it was actually what they were was kind of like an operator central over there. That's what they used to call it. And it was central. I mean, you don't hear anybody call it that anymore nowadays. But 2 feet of lines came together, so her father apparently he had to sit there at a switchboard, switch line. Somebody want to call somebody